He has been at the center of intense mediation efforts between Russia and Ukraine. Barely a week ago, he managed to bring together in his native Antalya the foreign ministers of these two countries in a meeting that he chaired, a tripartite meeting with them. His country, a NATO member, is possibly in a unique position to mediate in this conflict. It is my pleasure to welcome to the stage Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlüt Çavuşoğlu and CNBC's Hadley. Welcome to you both.
Your Excellency, welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome, of course. My name is Hadley. I am CNBC's Chief International Correspondent and anchor based in Abu Dhabi, and I'm thrilled to be here at the Doha Forum and speaking to the gentleman beside me. Your Excellency, just to kick things off, I was on side in Antalya for the first meeting of the foreign ministers of Russia and Ukraine. I spoke directly with Sergei Lavrov, as I did exclusively with the Ukrainian foreign minister. And the takeaway from the talks seemed to be, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's great that we're talking, but we're not getting anywhere yet. And we know that the conflict is not going well for Russian President Vladimir Putin. Is there a way to get a face-saving exit soon?
First, thank you very much for this question, and let me thank our host, Qatar, for inviting us Doha Forum. And to answer your question, it's a difficult question, but we have to find a face-saving way out or honorable exit for both sides, and they can sell publicly and globally. And at the beginning, we did our best to prevent this war. My President Erdogan spent a lot of efforts, and I was in touch with my colleagues on both sides. And of course, there are different channels. It was important to bring two foreign ministers at that level. I mean, the two countries at that level was important, symbolic, and the expectation was not very high. And you know, there is another track, Belarusian track, and there is also a channel or back channel between presidents. And as the international community, we should continue pressure on particularly the aggressor, which is Russia, and then their aggression on Ukraine's sovereignty is unacceptable. And that's, at the same time, we should help both sides to find this face-saving way out. So, and there is a back channel between two presidents, as far as I know. I don't want to go into the details of this process. So it seems that they have been negotiating serious issues, serious items. Probably everybody knows all these 6 items. And so I hope at the end they can agree and we can have ceasefire. But meanwhile, we need urgent humanitarian ceasefire, particularly in Mariupol and the other areas that they have been fighting, and to evacuate the people. So we need to open humanitarian corridor as well. So there is a still chance, there is a still hope, but we have to continue our efforts.
And in terms of continuing those efforts, when I spoke with the Ukrainian foreign ministers on the sidelines in Antalya, he essentially said that everything that he brought up with Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, Mr. Lavrov was not empowered by the Kremlin to do anything about. And we're talking about humanitarian corridors. We're talking about a ceasefire agreement. Everything he brought up to Mr. Lavrov said, hey, I don't have the mandate to do anything. What's your expectation for talks going forward? Do you think that President Putin is willing to give Sergei Lavrov some negotiating power?
Well, both of them are my colleagues, first of all. Secondly, we have facilitators and mediators, and we have to be honest broker. And it will not be appropriate to say one side is more forthcoming, one side is less. So everybody knows, I think, the positions of both sides. And our job is to actually help them to find this face-saving way out. And at the end, you know, these different tracks I just mentioned, at the end, who will give the final decision? Leaders, 2 presidents, Putin and Zelensky. So that's why we have been also trying to bring them together as well.
We've already heard from President Zelensky essentially giving way on the idea that Ukraine could become a member of NATO. It puts NATO, of course, in a difficult situation because from the very beginning, the United States, Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General, saying to me that this should be the determination of Ukraine, not left in the hands of Vladimir Putin.
Well, I think Ukraine understood that the NATO membership will not happen. It was not going to happen anyway, and many European allies were against this membership, NATO membership of Ukraine and Georgia. So Ukraine understood this perfectly. And to my mind, I have been advocating this more freely when I was not foreign minister of Turkey, that Ukraine has no luxury to choose between West or East, between Russia and Europe, between Turkey and Russia. Ukraine, Turkey as countries in our region should have a balanced foreign policy with everybody. We are NATO member, but we have been, despite all these difficulties, we have been working with Russia on different, very difficult files, Syria, Libya, and South Caucasus, and etc. So Ukraine should be led to have more balanced foreign policy by Russia, by all of us, particularly by Europeans and West.
But it isn't just the idea that Turkey should be an arbiter for peace, is it? Because at the end of the day, you're hamstrung as much as the rest of Europe because you've got 85% of your wheat coming from Ukraine and Russia, and the bulk of your energy coming from Russia as well. So there's a deep sense of urgency, no, on the part of the Turks to get something done.
This current situation has impact on all of us and on globalization, on different sectors, on Europe and beyond, energy, and look at the energy prices. And we have excellent relations with both sides, and we are doing business with them, trade, and our trade volume has been increased more than 70% in last year comparing the previous year. And we signed a free trade agreement with Ukraine in February, beginning of February, during the high-level strategic council meeting in Kiev. So the two partners, of course, it has impact on not only Turkey, but other Black Sea countries and Middle East, Europe, and South Caucasus, all of us. So it has to, we have to end this bloodshed and war. We need peace and stability in our region.
Well, if you look at Turkey specifically, your currency last year was one of the worst, and frankly the worst by far in terms of performance of the G20 nations. It was off 44%. Can Turkey afford for this crisis to go on for much longer?
Well, we stabilized these currency fluctuations. And despite this crisis, if you look, of course, energy prices went up everywhere. And so we stabilized our currency. And if you look at the growth rate, it was 11% last year. And if you look at the first quarter, we have been actually monitoring, it's very promising. And our export is increasing tremendously, production capacity.
I would be curious to understand your definition, sir, of stability of currency. And the reason I ask that is off 44% last year. When I'm sitting in a Turkish cab and they're forcing me to pay in euros while they check on the calculator to figure out what that equates in Turkish lira, I don't think that's a stable currency.
No,
I think that's pretty unstable.
Everybody, if that's like if $1 is equal to 2 Turkish lira, 10 Turkish lira, or if it is fixed, then nobody needs calculator. But I think if you go any other country that don't use the dollar or euro as currency, you have to do it. If you go to Poland, you have to do the same thing. You have to be fair.
When you think about what happens next as a NATO member, this poses a lot of different questions for Turkey specifically. You obviously purchased, quite infamously, the S-400 systems from Russia. There was talk at that time that you would potentially look to purchase the next generation of weapons from Russia. Is that still on the table, given what we're seeing?
Well, we purchased this S-400. It's a done deal. And recently we have seen these very interesting rumors that Turkey will, or Turkey is asked to give this S-400 to Ukraine. It's out of question. So it's really funny to raise this, and it was leaked by Americans, I think. So we never considered this. It's a done deal. Does Turkey need more air defense systems with that range? Yes. And we prefer to purchase them from United States and from allies. And if we cannot purchase from our allies, I have to find another source. Now, energy, you just mentioned energy. Our dependence to Russia on gas was 51% 4 years ago. Now it is less than 40%. So we are diversifying and finding the new energy sources. And we are also investing a lot in renewable. And on defense industry, now we are able to produce, thank God, alhamdulillah, more than 70% of our needs. And we are also working on the air defense system. They will be also as successful as our drones. But meanwhile, I need more air defense system. Our region is not safe haven for any of us. So in this case, we are still working on other alternatives. For instance, in Brussels, 2 days ago, my president met President Macron and Prime Minister Italy. And the main issue was SAMTI, air defense system. This is the joint venture of France and Italy. And we signed an agreement, a letter of intention with Eurosam like 8 years ago. Nothing happened until today. Now those two countries are more serious to have joint production in Turkey or to export SAMTI air defense system to my country.
So
I have to get it from somewhere.
So are you potentially considering more air defense system S-500 from Russia?
It is not a choice, or I have to consider any possibility. But my first choice is to purchase air defense system from my allies, if not from other sources.
You don't consider that a conflict of interest, given President Putin?
Why it should be conflict of interest? First, I have to protect
because he's illegally invaded a sovereign state.
My country is a sovereign country, and I have to protect my country, and I have to purchase my needs from any possible sources. But as I said, my first choice is my allies, United States, Eurosam, and European countries. We are working with UK, but at the end, if they don't want to sell any items to Turkey, what should I do? And despite all this support, Turkey is supposed to European security, Turkey is supposed to Ukraine, and still we cannot get export licenses from our NATO allies. And it is not my fault. And UK recently reversed this, and Boris Johnson called my president, and now we can import all this stuff that we need from UK. But we cannot get it from United States. We cannot get it from France or from some other NATO allies. So what should I do? I should wait for years and years to just convince our NATO allies or European friends to provide us something that we need urgently?
So there are limits for Turkey when it comes to the NATO alliance.
Well, I have also my own priority.
When you think about what happens next with regards to the refugee crisis, we're not just talking about Ukrainians flooding into Europe. We're also talking about Russians leaving en masse for places like Dubai and like Turkey. And that raises questions about havens for illicit finance. There's a report in Al Monitor suggesting that Roman Abramovich has put 2 of his yachts in Turkey. Can you confirm that those yachts are there?
Even before this crisis, we were telling everybody that this refugee crisis will continue. And the number of the people that will be leaving their countries will increase. And it has increased before this war. It went up to 85 million from 70 in
Yes, but I'm talking about
years.
the oligarch crisis. And I mean the people with money who are leaving to Turkey.
You mentioned the refugee crisis, and now you don't let me to answer your question. And your problem is, your question is about this humanitarian crisis, or your concern is about these oligarchs? Look, whatever the activity in Turkey, it has to be legal. We will allow any legal and legitimate activities, and we will not allow any illegal activities in Turkey, whatever it is. Principal position, period.
would you consider Russian oligarchs who are sanctioned by the West, by European nations, to be a part of that illicit?
I just answered your question, I guess.
And so, yes. Now, can you confirm?
No, I didn't say yes. I said
No.
I will allow any legal activities, and in my country, I cannot allow any illegal activities. This is a very simple answer.
So are
I
Russian
didn't say
oligarchs
yes,
welcome
I
in
didn't
Turkey?
say no. But my answer is very clear.
Are Russian oligarchs welcome in Turkey?
Well, if Russian oligarchs visit my country, I didn't, since I didn't join the sanctions, I am not implementing sanctions. In principle, we implement UN-approved sanctions. So if any Russian citizens want to visit Turkey, of course they can visit Turkey. Now Russians are coming to Turkey as tourists, no problem. Ukrainians are coming. The number of the Ukrainians that came to Turkey is more than 60,000 at this moment. So if you mean that whether these oligarchs can do any business in Turkey, then of course, if it is legal and if it is not against international law, I will consider. If it is against international law, then that's another story.
Walk me through how you see these talks playing out in the short term, because we've just seen the talks in Antalya. Do you believe that we're going to see these foreign ministers getting together again in the short term? Because we've just seen the president in Poland.
Well, if they agree to meet again, particularly to sign any ceasefire initially before the presidents, there is a possibility. But something must be cooked more at Belarusian track. And it is, I mean, we see some rapprochement over there, and let the two sides to give the details of it. And there is, of course, possibility to bring the foreign ministers first, and then presidents to seal the agreements.
Is the sticking point Donbass, or is the sticking point Crimea?
Well, they have, of course, they are all very sensitive issues, each of them. But it is not easy for them to reach an understanding on these very delicate issues while the war continues, while innocent people, civilians are dying. So these are the issues I think they can reach an understanding when there is a ceasefire in calmer and relatively more positive atmosphere.
When you think about this with regards to being a NATO member, the entire idea that NATO's mission in so many ways has been empowered by, or re-empowered perhaps, by the invasion of Ukraine. What does that mean for Turkey? Because we've seen so many differences, and we've just mentioned one of them, the S-400, for example, in how Turkey sees the world versus the rest of NATO. Do you feel like you are closer to the alliance now more than ever? Because all I ever hear when I interview NATO officials is how unified everyone is.
Well,
You don't sound too unified if you've got to look elsewhere for
I wish you look at the contributions of Turkey to NATO before you came over here. We are always in top 5 in terms of our contribution to NATO, NATO's activities. And financially also, our financial contribution to NATO budget is, I think we are, in terms of our contribution, we are in top 8. So we have been a NATO ally, and between NATO allies, there are other differences or differences between other NATO allies. Even during the debates and discussions on the joint statements or on NATO's reply to Russia's letter, and during the NATO-Russia Council meeting before this war, and we saw the differences between allies, between Baltic states and the other Western European countries and Poland, UK. There are also differences. We might in the future also have differences. But Turkey is a solid NATO ally, and Turkey is contributing to NATO and the alliance more than 90% of the NATO members.
So you feel that as a member of NATO, the alliance is at its strongest?
Look, we see the unity in general, more unity, and this is solidarity, allied solidarity. At last NATO summit demonstrated allied solidarity. And many leaders, including Biden, expressed that they have never seen such solidarity, allied solidarity in NATO, so which is good. And we have to show this solidarity. We should have one voice in such difficult situation. And in our response that to face the challenges and threats in our region and beyond. So the last ministerials, both foreign ministerials and defense ministers meeting and summit, we also observe this allied solidarity more than ever.
And final question, Foreign Minister. I mean, when you take a step back, it's very difficult to project foreign policy power over the long term if you don't have solid economic power back at home. When you look at what's happened to Turkey in the last 10 plus years that President Erdogan has been in office, in spite of that initial burst of growth, we've seen the economy suffering deeply in the last few years. And that is in part due to his very creative policies. And I'm talking about the fiscal monetary policies of the central bank and various central bank governors, and there have been several. When you take a step back and think about it, what we've seen in the Russian economy in the last few weeks since President Putin decided to invade Ukraine has been total economic destruction. What's your advice to the Russians?
That between questions, you really enjoy criticizing or targeting my country and my economy. I hope that it was based on the truth. Well, look at the last 20 years. Look at the figures. Be objective. And per capita income of Turkey 18 years ago was $3,000. Now it is almost $10,000. Okay? And we are, in terms of the income and per capita income, we are in top 20 and top 17. And if you look at the growth rate in last 18 years, it's more than 5%. Every country, every region can face such economic crisis. Didn't Europe have such economic crisis like 8 years ago? And in other parts of the world, and America also suffered a lot from the economic crisis, and high inflation now is the main problem of even the strongest economies, and all of us. Of course, Russian economy is hit tremendously by these sanctions, and it affects its currency rate and ruble, and also if you look at the figures, economic growth rate, there will be a negative growth rate for this quarter. It's estimates, the institutions are estimating 35%, and for the first quarter, of course, inevitably, Russian economy will be affected with these sanctions and economic policies. There is a war. But Turkish economy is getting better and Turkey is growing. So don't worry about that.
Your Excellency, thank you so much.
I hope you were not disturbed with my answer. Thank you very much.